Creating an assessment with TEKSbank items. To create an assessment with TEKSbank items, you'll go to School Objects, log in, and click on Aware. Once you get into Aware, you'll click on the Assessment tab. From here, to build an assessment, you'll go down to the far bottom left corner, click on Create a New Teacher Test. When the blue screen comes in, you'll click on Create a New Blank Test and go to the far bottom right corner and click Next. Here's where we'll give our test a title. Choose the grade that we're going to store it in and click Next in the far bottom right. This will pull in the course tree. The course tree is where we'll search for our texts that have the items attached to it. So I'm going to go to Elementary, 5th grade, ELAR, and click Next in the far bottom right. When it says you're done, click Finish in the far bottom right. So the first tab we're looking at is the General tab. The General tab is where if you had a spelling mistake in your title, you could fix that. If you stored it in the wrong subject or the wrong grade, you could move it and then click Save so your changes save. If you wanted to delete this test, you could go down to the far bottom right corner and you'll see Remove Test. So you'll scroll down and find that at the very bottom. And this will delete the test. From here, let's go to the Questions tab. The Questions tab is where we can add questions to our test. So let's talk about the first button that says Add Questions. This one is if you want to write your own questions to the test. But today we're not going to do that. We're going to go over to the Search Item Bank and search for items in the bank. So click on that. The window will drop down, and when it does, you'll see a line at the top that says click here to search keywords and question text. This is where you can type in a keyword or the SE to search for questions. What I like to do is click on the little blue arrow next to it so it opens up my SEs. And from here I can search for the SE that I want to test. So today I want to test inferencing. So I'll scroll through, find that Fig 19 for inferencing, click on that, and then I'll click Search Item Bank within the drop down. So my little wheel starts spinning, which lets me know it's searching for items. So now that my items are in, let's talk about this up here first before we talk about the items. If you look over here, you've got banks, and this is where if your district had multiple banks, you could search for all the banks or choose just one. You've got difficulty, complexity, and blooms. You could search by that, but I will let you know that as you begin to narrow down through those, you could narrow yourself out of questions. You have type. This is where you can search by type. So selected response is multiple choice. Numerical is your griddable. Constructed response is open response short answer. And resources is your passages, and we won't search for resources from here. We'll search in another spot for those. Then we have language, English and Spanish. So if you teach 2nd grade through 5th grade, math, science, and social studies, you would want to make sure you chose your language. If you're doing English, you choose the SLAR text to find passages and questions for those. We no longer have any modified questions in the bank, so you don't have to worry about that. So let's come down here and look at the questions. If you notice on each line there's a blue arrow. If I click that blue arrow, it allows me to look at the question and read it. If I go across, I can see it's a multiple choice, it's medium, analyzing, and if I come all the way across, I can see there's a little sheet of paper. When I click on that little sheet of paper, it allows me to see the passage and read it. So after I've read the passage and the question, if I like this, I can come over and click the little green circle. Click it one time and one time only, because as many times as you click the green circle is as many times as it will add the question to your test. So you can see I waited, the check came in, and I can see below that my passage is there. I'm going to close this little blue arrow, and maybe I want to look at some other questions. So if I scroll through, and here's a constructed response. So when I look at this one, I can read the question, open the little sheet of paper, and see that this is a completely different passage. So maybe I don't want this one. I want to find more questions that go to my other passage, and I'm going to show you that in just a few seconds. So I'm going to close this window. Once I close this window, I can see my passage, and if I scroll down, I can see my question below the passage. So to find more questions to this passage, if I highlight the title name, click Control-C for copy, and come over here, instead of Search Item Bank, I'm going to go to Search Resources. Click on that. The window comes open, and I paste in with Control-V the passage name. And then I'm going to click Search Resources. So my little wheel starts spinning, and it is searching for the rest of the questions to this passage. And so there they are. These are all the questions to this passage. And you can see they have little blue arrows next to them to where I can open them up and look at them. So as I check each one of these questions, you can notice little green checks slowly come in. There we go. So I've checked several of them there. Once I close this window, I can scroll down and see the rest of my questions that I've added to this passage. So let's say that I don't want to search for a TEK, I just want to search for a passage with all the questions. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom so that my next passage will go below this set. And instead of going to Search Item Bank, I'm going to go to Search Resources. So my window will open up, and I'm going to, instead of typing in the passage name, I'm going to click on the blue arrow. And if you notice over here, I now have a feature called Genres. So I can click on this and choose which genre that I want to use. So maybe we were doing informational expository. And I'm going to click Search Resources, and now what it's going to do is it's going to pull in the passages, all of the passages that are coded informational expository. All right, so here you see this one says A Day in a Life, and then there's the questions that go to it. If I click the little blue arrow, there's the passage so I can read it. Let me scroll down. There's the next passage, and it says it's a paired one. So if I look at it, if I go to the end of the line and click on the blue arrow, I can actually look at it, see that it is a paired passage. Go up and close that little blue arrow so I can look at the questions. So maybe this one I want to add. So if I want to add this one, let's say I look at the questions and like it and everything, I click the green circle. Wait for that one to add, and maybe I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more to it. There we go. So all my checks are there. I'm going to close this window, and then as I scroll down, there's my passage, and there's my questions that I added to it. So there's a couple of little editing features you can also do right after you've added your questions. Maybe you want more questions to go on one page. Well, if I hover my cursor over the question, there's a little pencil. If I click on the pencil, I can open the question up, and from here I can do any editing. So if I wanted it to be 3 answer choices instead of 4, I could click the X at the end of the line and remove. If I wanted to add another question answer, I could add another answer and click the plus sign. If I wanted to change anything in here, I can change it. Like if I wanted to bold his name, I could bold that. So there's all kinds of things that I can do within here. If I go to the Options tab, so see I'm on the Questions tab. If I go to the Options tab, I can now come in here and change the question to full width. Or if I want to try to get more questions on the page, I can change the spacing from 6 lines to 2. Don't go to 1 because that really puts them on top of each other. Once I change that, I can click Finish. And you notice, you see how question 2 moved closer to question 1. So then I can go to question 2, do the same thing with it, go to Options, change it to 2 lines, oops, not 1, 2 lines, click Finish, and there you go. I've moved some questions up. So if I want to try to get question 6 onto this page, I would probably want to go ahead and do question 3. And maybe I want to do question 5 to see if I can get that other question onto this test, onto this page. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move question 4. See if I move it. Did that help me get it on there? Not yet. So let's do this one. So you can see you can move everything around. Still can't get it there because question 5. So let's go to 6 and see if I can get. Okay, so I probably have to do a little more moving around to get that last question on there. So let's talk about some other editing of questions that you can do on here. I can edit my passages, so I have a pencil next to it. So if I wanted to go in and bold some things in the passage, I could. Or if I wanted to take some of the passage out because it was too long to read, I could go in and take that out. But remember to go in and make edits to your questions also. Now, the rest other things I can edit in the question, if I click on the pencil, this one opens up this question, and you can see it's got a griddable and it's got a rubric in here, so you could actually score it with the rubric if you have, a scoring system. Underneath this, we've talked about the options tabs and the things you can change there. Under the standards tab, you notice that I can actually add and remove some standards. So if I didn't like this standard to this one, I could remove it by clicking remove. And now I'm set to where I have to click a new standard, so I'm going to go to new primary standard. It opens it up. And let's say I click on this one. You noticed I double clicked on it. When I double clicked it, it added it. If I wanted to add a secondary standard, I could come over here and add a secondary standard by double clicking on it, and it adds it on there. So once I'm finished adding those standards, I click finish, and now I have 2 standards associated with that. So that is creating and editing a TEKSbank test.